Hello, welcome to the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. I am your host, Roy Kessel, and today we are very excited to have with us Dr. Corye Beene. Corye is the editor of Awesome Sports, a great newsletter that I encourage you to subscribe to, and she'll get you that information as we go through the show. And she's also an adjunct assistant professor of U.S. history at the University of Texas, Arlington. And Corye's done a lot of great work looking at important issues in sports. So Corye, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Roy. Excited to be here.
There's so much that we have to talk about with the work that you're doing. But before we get to that stage of it, I really want to take you back to your childhood and find out what got Corye interested in sports.
Well, I started playing when my brother's 3 years younger than me. And when he started playing sports, I asked my parents, why sports? So I did, I played basketball, I played youth basketball, volleyball, track. And as I got older, I continued to play basketball and volleyball. And then by the time I got to high school, my coaches told me and my parents, we think she's got something. I was tall. I am tall, 5'11". And they said, if she really works hard and plays club volleyball, she can get a volleyball scholarship. So sure enough, club volleyball was relatively new. The club that I joined in the 80s, it was, a very new club. And through that program, it developed me. And then when I played high school volleyball, my senior year, I was all city, I was all region, I was all area. I got to play on the Texas State All-Star team. And through that avenue, I got a full volleyball scholarship. So I was really, really lucky that my parents didn't have to dish out any money for my bachelor's degree. And that is how that is my sports story. And then when I went to Angelo State, my college, my undergraduate degree is from there. That's how I got introduced to history. And, I learned a lot, of course, in my history classes. And I heard about this thing called Title IX. And, it was just a foregone conclusion to people, I guess, in my generation, that girls could always play sports. Girls always had funds to stay in a hotel and play their sport and get scholarships, but that wasn't always the case. And so as I looked more into it, that became my real passion. And when I pursued my PhD at Texas Tech, that is what my dissertation is about. It's about Title IX, women's athletics in the state of Texas, specifically the AIAW, which oversaw and ran women's athletics before the NCAA took it over. And that is, what I'm really interested in. And it's perfect timing, Roy, because we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of Title IX. So I'm going to have a special newsletter about Title IX here this month that everybody should check out.
Well, as you said, we're celebrating 50 years. It's come a long way, but when you dive into it, it still has a long way to go. When we look around the inequities that exist, not only at the NCAA level, but at the youth level, and certainly probably even more so at the professional level, it's still got a long way to go. Obviously, Title IX is written primarily to apply not in the professional context, but as a aspirational goal, right? We've seen a lot of improvement in the exposure for women's sports, but that was your dissertation. So you went to Texas Tech and you focused on that issue of Title IX.
Yes, sir.
Where did that lead you from that? Because we see a lot of people come up through the sports industry in different ways, right? And they have a capstone project or a thesis, or they do something, and then that piece of work goes on the shelf and never to see the light of day at any other point, right? It's something great that they did, but they never follow up on it. And clearly that's not the case with you.
Well, I just wanted to continue to seek out the positive stories. You know, I felt like Timeline was a positive to women of my generation and even younger girls who get to play sports. They get more opportunities probably than even I did. And, you know, I just want to celebrate sports, especially for women. And that's what my newsletter is about. It's about positive stories, inspirational sports stories, and, you know, it avoids politics and it avoids, you know, some of the negative aspects of sports that unfortunately the media likes to focus on. And to me, there are a lot of great stories out there. And so I want to focus on the positive. And, you know, my dissertation advisor keeps telling me to make my dissertation into a book. And I told him I was going to. So I'm working on that. You know, some aspect of my dissertation, I'm working into publishing it in a smaller, kind of a smaller, probably publication. But, you know, I love sports history. I try and mention some sports history in my U.S. history classes. Maybe Arlington will let me teach a sports history class at some point. But, you know, I love sports and I love what it does for the youth. You know, that the statistics say that, especially for girls, that girls who play sports, they do better academically. They stay away from drugs and alcohol more. You know, there's the self-esteem and mental health aspects of sports are beneficial. So if I can be part of sharing the great parts of sports, then I want to do that. That's what I feel like my calling is.
Well, and it's certainly the focus you talked about, really the elements of uplifting people, not focusing on the negative that's out there. We see so many instances on ESPN or Fox Sports or anywhere else where it's really, what did the athletes do wrong?
Right.
And there's so many more of the athletes that are doing good, doing great things in their communities.
That's right.
One crazy tweet takes over a whole week on ESPN, on all the talking shows and on the ticker. And yet people that have invested months and years into their foundations or projects or supporting other nonprofits in their community get very little attention. And so when you decided to launch your newsletter, tell us about what went into that decision.
Well, I started my newsletter in late 2020, and this was right after the Colin Kaepernick situation in the NFL, and it was just so divisive. And I was just getting tired of reading all these stories about, well, you know, the problem is sports. Sports that's the problem with sports. You know, it's about competition, and now it's about politics. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do something that I don't think is out there, and I'm just going to focus on the positives. You know, I like to write I like to find stories that I hope my readers, you know, are inspired by. You know, I like to find stories about, like, when the NFL had its first female ref in it, and now we have a couple of female refs in the NFL. One of them is African American, right? That's a positive story. And I love stories where you see high schoolers do something nice for somebody who's disabled, or you know, I always put things in there. You know, I like to focus too on Olympic sports because they don't get as much airtime as the other sports do. So, you know, I put things in there about the gold medal winners. Who are the gold medal winners? And during the Super Bowl, I like to put my top 3 favorite Super Bowl commercials from the Super Bowl show in there. So, you know, I just try and vary it a little, but it's always with the end goal of, this is the fun part of sports. This is the great part of sports. These are the positive stories of sports.
Well, and it's so interesting to look at that when you go and look at what the process is for the fun part of sports, right? That word fun has become lost in so many of the sports environments these days, from youth all the way up, where we used to talk about playing sports, right? And now it's really heavily commercialized, heavily professionalized from a young age, right? You can't just roll the ball out and go to practice a couple times a week and go play a game. It's you need to practice 3, 4, 5 times a week, and you're going to have games and tournaments every weekend or many weekends. Becomes a whole family lifestyle instead of a kid's recreational endeavor.
It is. You know, my son plays club soccer, and I try and tell him that this is fun. You're supposed to be having fun. And if it gets to the point where, you know, it's not fun and it's drudgery and it's work, then that's where you lose kids. Because, you know, I know when I was playing volleyball, doing club vol, that was all year round, and you didn't get much of a break. And so I know what it was like to feel a little burned out. So, you know, I'm thankful that club soccer gives the kids off a few weeks during the summer, so they can, you know, get that passion back while they're off, and it reignites that passion, and hence you go and have fun.
Yeah, I think that the fun is really important, and to keep kids active. And you talk about it for girls, right? So you look at Title IX, huge new number of opportunities for women, still not equal to what the boys and the men are getting. But one of the challenges has been keeping women and young girls involved in sports beyond the early stages. And there's been a tendency for them to quit or quote unquote retire at a very young age from playing sports. And so how do we deal with something like that to encourage the girls to continue to play sports beyond 10, 11, 12 years old, with the recognition that it's okay for sports to be recreational for them? It doesn't have to be a means to a college scholarship, or with the idea that they're going to have a professional career.
Well, you know, I think that's right. And I just think that it's important for coaches and adults to share the benefits. You know, just because if you want to play a sport and you don't want to do it competitively in junior high school or high school, that's fine. Just go out there and get some physical activity. You know, get out there and shoot some hoops, play some tennis. You know, there's those tennis courts often at any school. There's a basketball, you know, there's a basketball court somewhere. Even walking and jogging is great. And if we can continue to promote that, maybe that will lead to other avenues where they think, hey, you know what, I kind of like this. Maybe I could join a team in high school. And in competition, I think is a good thing. You know, I think a lot of people try to diminish the benefits of competition, but that's what life is like in the United States. You know, United States is about competition. And if you can get that drive going in young girls and boys at a young age, that it's okay to want to win. But it's okay to lose, but let's play the game right. Let's have good sportsmanship. Let's encourage each other. Let's have teamwork. And all of those are valuable skills. I don't care what your profession is going to be later in life. Those are all good skills to have.
Yeah, one of the challenges we hear from a lot of athletic administrators, especially with respect to Title IX compliance, is the fact that the participation element is challenging, because many, you know, they say you roll out, let's just take soccer as an example, because you brought that up. You roll out a soccer ball in college, and there's going to be as many possible guys trying out for the team, right? They're going to play, they're going to have a certain number of scholarships, but you're going to get other people who believe they have a chance or would like to participate coming out. And so they can fill up a roster or a bench with all kinds of extra people that want to participate. And on the flip side, what we hear frequently is that in the women's side, those that had not been recruited, right, so the equivalent of walk-ons, don't exist as much because the girls, the women that were recruited come out and they're on the soccer team. But then the others that live in the dorms or in private housing are just like, well, I wasn't recruited, so obviously I'm not good enough to be on the team.
Right.
You know, how do we overcome that type of mentality to encourage more of that engagement and participation?
Well, you know, I think most people don't understand the way that that scenario works, is that you don't need to have a scholarship to play on the team. You can try out. You can, and, you know, you can walk onto the team. You know, there have been players that have walked onto the team who will get scholarships. Now, you don't hear those stories as much in women's athletics as you do in men's athletics. You know, we know the story of Baker Mayfield in the NFL, who walked on at Texas Tech and wasn't starting. So he went to Oklahoma and he worked his way into a scholarship, and, you know, then he got a Heisman Trophy. So, you know, that is a rare example, but girls can do the same thing. Is they can try out for a team. Maybe they'll start as a walk-on, but if they continue to get better, they could get some scholarship money. And, you know, it's all about education. So counselors at high schools play a vital role. Parents, coaches, you know, if we can get the word out there more, then maybe girls will listen and understand that they still have options when they go to college.
So you mentioned parents and counselors. So how do we get that word out there, and what can we do, both as Sports Philanthropy Network to our viewers and listeners? What can everyone do to help support this cause?
Well, I would, you know, send an email to your high school, one of your high school counselors, and say, you know, do you know the process of sports and how you get on a team in college? Even though maybe this person plays a sport in high school and she wasn't recruited, that doesn't mean that all of her avenues are closed now. And on top of that, Roy, at many colleges and universities, if you don't make the varsity team, you can still play intramurals. You know, I think more research and more work needs to be done on the benefits of intramurals. I haven't really seen much on that topic, but intramurals, for those people who don't know what that is more of a recreational, let's go out and have some fun, let's go out and get some exercise kind of league in college. But it's still very competitive. They give awards out, you get your team together, they have referees, the college pays for all this, and you're still getting that competitive bug out of you. You're still getting some exercise, you're still getting the teamwork, you're still having fun, still talking a lot of smack. So, you know, it's still a great experience.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head when you talk about the fact that the impact of intramural sports is really not publicized enough.
It really isn't.
I
don't know why that is.
The benefits of it are enormous in terms of developing those same skills we talk about, being on a team, right, on a varsity team in high school or club or varsity team in college. You develop those relationships, you develop that leadership, you develop communication skills that are hard to duplicate in many other environments. And I think that when you take a look at what's going on, the challenge is people feeling that, you know, it's not even a second class citizen. In a sense, it's a third class citizen to doing it. And there's so much value to being active and leading an active lifestyle, right? Both from your own personal physical health, mental health, right? But when we talk about societal health and we look at all of the high costs of obesity, the high cost of mental health issues, the high cost of the healthcare system that needs to take care
Mm-hmm.
of people that are not active and are
Mm-hmm.
not engaged, because these are lifetime skills that are
Mm-hmm.
really important. It's not just about playing intramurals in college, right? I'm 57 and still play a lot of sports, and up till COVID was playing even more. It's been hard to get leagues back together for some of
Mm-hmm.
the sports like hockey and softball, but things like tennis and golf and other things still
Mm-hmm.
pretty active. And I know so many of my friends that were active in high school and quit playing everything in college and
Mm-hmm.
never resumed again, or were somewhat active in college and got into the professional world, the working
Mm-hmm.
world, never stayed active, right? Until
Mm-hmm.
somebody decides that a family member had cancer or had some other health issues, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I better get my butt to the gym and start getting into shape.
Right.
But it's not ingrained in their lifestyle. And I think that's one of the big challenges. I'd love to see you take up that study on the intramural sports and see how
I
we can
know.
collaborate, identifying and really addressing that issue, because really intramural sports are conceptually a high school or college type of issue,
Mm-hmm.
but in a sense all of the adult recreational sports leagues are the exact same thing as.
That's what they are. Yes. And yes, I feel like that's another important benefit that I want to talk about, is that it's my lifestyle. I've been physically active playing sports since I was in junior high. Now, I don't play in a league anymore. I kind of have a bum shoulder for volleyball, but I walk, I go to the gym several times a week. In the past with my kids are, a little older, but, I try and do things with them. So it really is. It's a lifestyle that there's nothing but positives for kids and adults. And if we can continue to get people active, then maybe we can address that obesity issue.
Well, it's so important, and I want to congratulate you on the work you're doing. Why don't you let people know how they can reach you or how they can subscribe for your newsletter?
So as you can see on the ticker going on the bottom there, it's awesomesports.substack.com. And it's a free newsletter, and I send it out every 2 weeks. So it's not going to take up a lot of space in your email box. And like I said, I like to just promote the fun things of sports, the positive stories. And this month I'm going to have a special Title IX issue. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a little bit autobiographical. And I'm also going to have some links in there for if people want more information on Title IX. I'm going to put some podcast links in there also.
So Corye, as you go through this for this Title IX issue, right? We've been through 50 years. Mm-hmm. We've made certainly some advances, but not nearly enough. Certainly not anywhere approaching what I would call full compliance with Title IX. What do you see happening in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I'm hoping that people start taking women's sports more seriously. I was very irked by what happened at the NCAA March Madness tournament 2 years ago. And, it went viral that the women's tournament had one little set of barbells, and the men's tournament for March Madness had this huge this huge room of plenty of weights, plenty of workout items. And I was thinking, wait a minute, when was that? Was that 2020? This is 2020. I mean, this is not the way that this should be happening. So, I feel like the NCAA needs to take a look into the mirror and say, hey, we're part of the problem here, because that was totally unacceptable. So I'm hoping that the NCAA has realized the error of its ways and is starting to promote women's sports more. Now, this last March Madness, they did. In fact, they're calling the women's tournament March Madness. So, that's a step in the right direction. But we see now that if you put women's sports on television, people are going to watch it. The WNBA ratings are up into the double digits. And, women's sports, people love to watch the women's sports in the Olympics. Women's gymnastics always does well, women's track and field. So, I'm hoping that advertisers and sponsors understand that there are people out there that want to watch women's sports.
Well, I'm trying to see if I can shift to an image here and put this up, because I think that let's see if we can do this. Oh, that's not going to work. So the idea is we'll have to try and find another way to do it. But I think that what we saw was the possibility that, we had previously questioned the NCAA. We put out a social media post and asked why do you have something that says Final Four and a different graphic that says Women's Final Four, right? Shouldn't it say Men's Final Four and Women's Final Four? And if you look at the graphics and the logos that came out for 2022, they did exactly that, and they changed that, so it wasn't one being quote unquote the real Final Four and one being the Women's Final Four. It was done in a way that put them on equal footing, right? A men's and a women's. So I think that they certainly learned something from that backdrop. So it's good to see that they took that to heart. I think one of the challenges that you see is looking at what are they going to do now going forward, right? How can you improve that? The Women's Final Four that we covered in Minneapolis this year was a fantastic event, sold out. And in fact, Minneapolis did such a great job hosting that the Big Ten tournament has now moved some of their basketball events away from Indianapolis, which is a hotbed of basketball, to Minneapolis for the conference tournament. So that's a big change compared to what we had seen in the past. So hopefully that awareness and the outcry will continue to drive and move things forward. TV coverage will continue to grow. I think we've seen terrific growth already. WNBA and WSL, we were on the phone earlier with the Hockey League. There's going to be growth, and the best way to accelerate that is to get people watching and participating. And so for everybody that's on here, you vote with your eyeballs, right? And you vote with your thumbs in terms of what you follow and support on social media.
Because, this generation, millennials, are all about video. It's the TikTok generation. So if they can see it, they can emulate it. We see that all the time. And if you see a TikTok dance, it goes viral, and you see all these other kids try and do the same dance. It's the same thing with women's athletics. If you can put it on the television, if you can promote it, if you can put clips of performances, girls see this and say, hey, that looks cool. I want to try that. I think I can do that. And that is where we are right now. So I am all about more promotion of women's sports, because I think that is a good key to get more girls to play.
Well, Corye, I want to thank you for being on the show with us today. Before we let you go, I want to flip up a very important question here on the ticker. And we're going to put you on the spot, use our magic powers and wave our magic wand. If you could be commissioner of any sport, what would that be?
Well, I would have to say volleyball, since that was the sport that I played. That was my love.
So now you're taking over, you're in charge of volleyball. What's your first course of action going to be? What's the one change you would like to see there?
I don't know if I would change anything about volleyball. When I played, we had the old timey rules where you could only score a point if you were serving. Now they have rally scoring. And I think it's better because it speeds up the game. But, you know, maybe every once in a while I might go back to having the old rules where if you're serving, that's the only way that you can score. But, you know, back in the day that I played, you know, you only played to 15. So that would really freak everybody out. I think that is playing right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you look at the switch to rally scoring, it it seems to somewhat take away, right, the advantage, you know, from a serving perspective, because in some ways you can't be quite as aggressive on your serves, because if you miss a serve, you lose a point instead of just losing side out
Right,
to the other
right.
side of the serve. And you know, I don't know if anybody's, again, as you said, done a study and examined the impact on what kind of scoring runs and things there are. I mean, women's volleyball has jumped up enormously in popularity and coverage. If you look at the last 5 to 10 years, really grown substantially. ESPN, you know, puts a lot of coverage behind it now going into the women's tournaments. So great to see that growth. Great to see that entertainment.
Can I answer that question in a different way, though, if I could change
Sure.
something in sport? Because it drives me bananas. Since, you know, my son plays club soccer, I would get rid of offsides. It just drives me bananas. I think if you want to put 1 or 2 or 3 guys down there in front of the goal and they're just going to pitch a camp there the whole game, so be it. It drives me bananas.
Very, very interesting, because that's one of my soapboxes that I've been on for a long time about soccer, and a little bit different than what you said, which is I like the offsides rule until you get inside the 18-yard box. And I think that when any ball is played from inside that 18-yard box, that you really need to allow the creativity and the magic that these guys can create. It would open up scoring enormously if the little flick headers and short touch passes inside the box could go through without worrying about whether somebody was, you know, a foot off sides. Again, it would change the way the teams had to play defense in that space. I understand that. But you're not letting people camp down there. You're not letting somebody play a ball from, you know, the other side of midfield to a person that's, you know, 20 yards beyond the last defender. But I think it would really enhance scoring. It would enhance creativity in a way that you can't do with the current rules.
See, great minds think alike. I'll let you start the petition, and then I'll sign it.
There we go. We'll put it up and see what we can come up with. So, Corye, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Roy.
And to all of our viewers and listeners, this is Roy Kessel signing off for the Sports Philanthropy Podcast. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Please remember to live generously. Thank you.